Good evening, everyone. Evening for me, potentially different time for those joining, but excited to jump in. I'll give it another second just in case anyone else joins, and then we'll dive in. Give it one more minute. Okay, well, I think we can just dive right in. Amanda, if you don't mind, maybe going to the first page. Thank you. Good to meet everyone. As a quick introduction, my name is Matt. I am an engineer by education. So as you can see here, I studied mechanical engineering at the Naval Academy, and eventually went on to get my MBA and my MS in mechanical engineering at MIT. Professionally, after the Naval Academy, I served on nuclear submarines. So I worked in nuclear engineering for a little bit, and then post MBA, where I nerded out for a couple of years getting the dual degree. I have been at the Boston Consulting Group. I'm a project leader out of our DC office, and I do most of my work at the intersection of industrial goods and operations. On the coaching side, though, I've been coaching really since 2018, since I got into the dual degree myself. And then professionally, I've been coaching with Leland almost since the beginning, a little over 2 years now. And then some other kind of admissions experience. I was the Veterans Club president at Sloan, so worked closely with admissions on how to bring out the best in veteran applications and non-traditional backgrounds. So again, good to meet everyone. I've got a couple topics to kind of get things started, but really this is an ask me anything, an open Q&A, as you can see here. A couple, like I said, discussion points that we can dive into, but before I just start, talking at you, would love to hear, any questions that you guys have that I can start with. Also, I'll just kind of walk through each one. All right, maybe I'll get some follow-up questions. Well, I think I'm actually going to start with the second one here on the left-hand side, approach to application strategy. Now, the way I think about this when applying to whether it's a business school, a master's program, or even a dual degree program is what is the holistic view of that you're going to bring to the application, right? So what I mean by that is each part of your application journey is going to have a unique value add. And what I mean by that is your essays, your resume, your letters of recommendation, the org chart, maybe there's a video response, maybe there's short answers. Every one of those pieces is like a piece of the puzzle, right, to a comprehensive application, right? And the key when you think about that application is you want each piece to be unique, right? You don't want to have duplicative stories. You don't want to have duplicative information, right? You want each piece to be separate and shed light on a different piece about your background, what makes you tick, and your accomplishments, right? So some common pitfalls I see when thinking about application strategy and the different pieces of your application is you might tell a story about a professional experience in one of your essays, and then one of your recommenders, might tell the same story, right? In that case, I would say, you had an opportunity to either tell a different story in your essay or potentially work with your recommender to highlight a different professional experience, that adds additional color to your application, right? So that's kind of what I mean by your approach to application strategy. And I think one piece of this that I'll also touch on is how important it is in the beginning of an application to really take your time and do some self-reflection, right? I talk to, you know, a ton of applicants and a ton of professional coaches. And I'll say that the most common theme I hear from professional coaches is invest, invest, invest early with clients, you guys. And then if you're applying, right, investing early in kind of this self-reflection period. And I say that for a couple of reasons. One, when you think about, you know, who you are and what you're trying to go do, like that's a very difficult decision to make, right? Like it took me a long time to figure out what I wanted to do when I grew up. And then two, you're going to have to really like dig deep into your why and what you want to go do, et cetera. And like that takes time and iteration to get right. And then I think three, just as you continue to apply to programs and think about programs that fit, you're going to want to really spend that time because it just makes the essays easier, right? If you're continuously changing what you think you want to go do, right, or like the path you want to follow, it can just make things very difficult to go follow. And I'll pause there because I have a question in the chat. What method do you recommend to do the self-reflection? I have a few things. So one, every client that I work with, I actually send a brainstorming document which outlines a bunch of questions about, you know, who you are, where you come from, experiences that have positively impacted your life, experiences that have negatively impacted your life, biggest challenges, right? Like really trying to get to know you as a client. What makes you tick? What do you want to do when you grow up is how I like to phrase it. And then like really pulling on that thread during an initial 30-minute conversation is how I like to coach clients and how I think you should approach brainstorming as well. And happy to, you know, share that if anyone's interested after this call. But essentially, right, it's a bunch of questions that really get to the root of, you know, what makes you tick, what about you is unique, what has made you successful, where do you want to be in 5 years, all those types of questions that really help kind of like drive that thinking. I'll pause there in case there's any follow-ups on the brainstorming. Okay. And then I'm actually going to kind of bounce around here. I'm going to go to choosing and prepping letters of recommendation next because I get a lot of questions from clients about this. Who do I pick for my recommendation? And then I'm really nervous. What are they going to write about me, right? So I'll cover the first topic first, which is who do I pick for my recommendation? A lot of people, yes, you can open your mic and ask questions in the chat. So please do so. I can pause or I can continue to go on recommendations.
Hello, Matt.
Hello.
Am I audible? My name is Vaibhav. I'm from India. So I'm pursuing my BE in electrical engineering currently and my master's in mathematics from BITS Pilani, India. So what my dream is to pursue my master's in computer sciences from the States itself. And I want to know what is the role of how much an essay CGPA, like my current CGPA, that is GPA in your case, accounts, how much percentage, what I have done about my internships and all, how much percentage does each of the this accounts while the graders look into my application?
Yeah, it's a good question. So to summarize, you're basically wondering how much weight does the admissions committee put on your GPA, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's a
Each
great
of
question.
this
It's a great question.
essay, GPA, and everything.
Yeah. Look, I mean, it's hard for me to put like percentages against this, right? I think what the admissions committee would tell you is it's the holistic picture, which is true. But what I'll say is this, like your GPA is a number that is in the past that you can't impact anymore, right? Like straight up, right? My GPA from college, I'll never be able to improve it, right? So what I tell people is your GPA is just a number. There are ways in which you can address a low GPA throughout your application. For example, right, I have clients that have a low undergrad GPA, but have done extremely well on the GMAT or the GRE, right? Whatever it might be for the school you're applying to. And essentially, kind of the main point is the admissions committee wants to know, can you handle the academic rigor, right? So essentially, like, will this person be able to handle the classes, get good grades, and graduate, right? So if you have a low GPA, obviously their confidence in that is going to be smaller. And if you have a good GPA, like, they're confident you're going to be able to handle the academics. That being said, again, the way I view this from like a coaching perspective, if you have a lower GPA, I always push my clients, like, you should try the hardest you can on your GRE and GMAT no matter what, but like, it's just more important if you have a lower GPA. That being said, I view test scores and GPAs almost as like don't close any doors, right? You don't want those to close any doors, right? If you have a really low GRE that might just, like, the admissions committee might look at it and not even look at the rest of your application, like, that's what we want to avoid with a test score and a GPA. And then I think if you can get your foot in the door with a GRE test score or a GPA that is around the median, right, plus or minus a little bit, then I think it comes down to, okay, what is this person's story? What do their essays read like? What is their recommendations, right? Then I think it shifts more towards, your essays and the other parts of your application. I know that that's probably not what you were looking for in terms of like hard numbers, but that's how I view it from like a coaching perspective, and how I would recommend, you look at it as you think about applying to schools. Does that help?
Yes, man, I got it. And one of the most intriguing questions which comes to my mind is like how to select what are the best courses and what are the best universities for my program. See, because I don't believe QS rankings as such. Like I know if see my main uh, goal is placements, getting placement out of the college. Because
Mhm.
of course I'll be spending around $100K for my approximately $100K, around $100K for my MS. And so definitely after college I want placements. So that's my mindset currently. Currently, I don't know about the future if I want to go into research and all, but currently it's about the placements only. So how do I figure out the colleges which are the best and like in the states itself?
Yeah, that's another great question. Well, I mean, I think most schools, I mean, at least I know a lot of business schools do this, right? A lot of business schools publish like an employment report each year, that is, median salaries, performance bonuses, all the compensation information, and then the companies and industries that the students are going to. For like a technical master's, I would just reach out to the program and see if they have information like that. And I would look at schools that you're interested in and those placement reports, and, you know, essentially make a list and start narrowing down which ones, you want to attend. Like, I think there's part of it where, like, if there's a bunch of schools that you think are academically or placement the same, like, you're going to want to look at geography, et cetera. Like, school selection as a whole, I think, has a few elements to it, right? To your point, there's placement, there's cost, there's location, there's class sizes, there's professors, there's a lot of things to consider. But I would start with trying to look at placement reports from each program, and then start whittling down your list from there.
Okay. So one more thing,
Yeah.
my my elder sibling, uh, like he's a cousin of mine. So he did his master's in computer sciences from Carnegie Mellon, and he got a letter of recommendation from the professor from Carnegie Mellon itself before he joined the university. He was in Triple IT Hyderabad, India, and he worked in Google for 2 years. After that, he worked with the professor himself, and he got the letter of recommendation. So in that case, I just want to ask, how much weight does LOR from a good professor weighs?
Yeah, again, a good question. I think this is what I was starting to dive into before we open the floor. Yeah, letters of recommendation. Look, I think people tend to overthink these. The most important part about a letter of recommendation is someone that has directly supervised you that can speak to your strengths, like hands down, right? Doesn't matter how senior they are or anything. The admissions committee wants someone that has managed you directly. I think after that, other things I would consider are, one, does the person have time to do a good recommendation for you, right? Like these recommendations are actually quite burdensome. Like I've written a few myself for former employees of mine, and like it's a lot of work on the recommender. So you want to make sure they have time to do it and do it right. And then I think the third consideration is kind of what you're getting at, which is like if you're choosing between two recommenders and one went to the school that you're applying to, like yes, probably a good idea to have the person that went to the school write your recommendation. But again, like that wouldn't be my first kind of decision point. Nor would like a super senior person at my company who I don't work with often be a person that I would ask for a recommendation either. So like, again, like how important are letters of recommendation? Again, I can't assign a weight to it. Like it's another data point the admissions committee is going to use. And, I think you can actually be quite strategic on not just selecting your recommender, but also prepping them as well, right? Like not writing the letter yourself. Like I'll never advocate for that. I don't think people should do it, but you can help them craft their letter of recommendation by saying, hey, these are some of the attributes I'm trying to draw out throughout my application. Here are a couple examples of when we work together that really stand out to me that might be good to write about, right? Like you can start to kind of plant those ideas, which not only like helps you kind of have a little more control over something that is not really in your control. And then also like it's a huge help to the recommender themselves, right? Now that you've done 50% of the thinking for them, they can spend time kind of filling in the gaps and going from there. So hopefully that answers your question. Again, like it's a piece of the puzzle, right? Like I don't think it's a
It
recommendation
does. It
going to be
does.
the reason
It
you
does,
get in
Matt.
or don't get in, but
Fantastic answers.
okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Now,
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
not wasting much of your time. Just sorry. Just not
No, I
wasting
love
just
it.
much
No,
of your time.
keep the questions
Just
going.
just two short questions. So first thing is, I told you that I am pursuing my BTech BE Bachelor's of Engineering in
Mhm.
Electrical Engineering, and I want to pursue my master's in Computer Sciences, which is like entirely changing my field of work. Although I do practice DSA, like computer sciences concepts myself on code forces and all, but uh, does that make me a less much of a contender? Because I have not done my bachelor's in CS and I want to pursue my master's in computers.
Yeah, I mean, it is a good question. I don't think so, right? Like I see this a lot with business school, right? Like people go to graduate school to either pivot careers or to get deeper knowledge on, in their current field, right? Like I think both are valid reasons to go get a master's degree. I think what's important if you are pivoting like from electrical engineering to um, a different specialty, I think like the story of your why just becomes a lot more important. Like, why did you choose electrical engineering? And then what kind of like light bulb went off in your head that made you realize like you actually want to pursue computer science and like a career in computer science, and that school's computer science program is going to help you get there, right? Like, I just think the narrative and story just becomes a little more important to cleanly spell out for the admissions committee. And
Right.
that goes into the essay piece, right? A lot of these schools will ask about career goals or what do you want to accomplish at this school, right? Like that's where you would annotate that and, you know, make that story clear to the admissions committee. Does that help?
Yeah, that does. But since we dive into the same concept, I have one more question. Like, I already have an internship in computer sciences. I have done an internship which was based on the ST role, engineer role, software development engineer role,
Mhm.
and I want like my CGPA is not that great. Out of 10, since GP over here is out of 10, not 4, I'll tell you my current GPA is 7.2. So I I'm I don't like electrical that much, but yeah. So should I focus more on increasing my CGPA, or should I work more like more internships, or after my completion of degree, I should work more in IT field so that my chances are more, or should I, or what should I do, or should I directly apply to the universities ahead, not wasting much of my time, since the money I would get in India after completing my bachelor's over here, bachelor's and master's in mathematics, uh, won't be enough that much that I'll be able to fund my MS in the States. So that's not a great deal. That money is not the matter over here, but time is. So what should I do?
Yeah, that it's a difficult question. I mean, I think I think there's value in like continuing to try to increase the GPA while you still have control over it. Um,
Yeah.
and at the same time, like showing drive and passion about computer science, like via internships, is like also just as important. But like part of me, without like knowing more information about like your exact profile, like I would say if you have control over your GPA, like definitely try to get that as high as possible, like even if you're not interested, because it just shows that you can handle academic rigor. Like electrical engineering is difficult, obviously. Um, but I think it's important if you can impact that GPA to increase it. And then I think you're doing the right thing by pursuing internships and extracurriculars, et cetera, like in computer science field, because that shows that you're serious about making the pivot.
Right, man. Got it. So that answers almost all of my questions. I'll be attending the sessions. If I get some of the questions in between, I'll be disturbing you after the session ends. Sorry and thank you.
No, no, thank you. Thanks for participating. Um, I'll pause there though. Victor, anyone else kind of in the gallery have any questions? If not, I'll just continue to touch some other pieces here. Okay, great. One other piece I want to touch now that we've finished letters of recommendation is interviews and video essays. I get a lot of questions on how do I tackle those? What do I need to do? What are the big do's and don'ts for those types of application pieces? I'll say first off, video essays are typically quite quite simple in terms of like tell us about yourself, right? Do an intro to your classmates. I genuinely err on the side of super basic for these, right? The MIT Sloan and obviously the LGO program as well, which is a dual degree. They have a video essay, right? Which is like introduce yourself to your classmates. My perspective on here, as I mentioned, is very straightforward. You should talk about who you are, where you're dialing in from, a little bit about your background. What do you like to do? Maybe you like to go to the beach. Maybe you like to play sports. Maybe you like to go to the movies, or maybe you have some sort of hobby, right? Like that's the kind of thing you want to highlight here. And then you want to wrap it up with, what you're excited about for this program. Are you excited to dive into, meeting your new classmates on campus and learning about XYZ, right? Like you want to keep it super general and basic and show them that, you have a personality, that you're not just someone who does their homework every night, right? Like you want to show them that you're an individual and bring your best self to the video, right? They're normally about a minute long. So again, no props, nothing like that. I usually just say pretty straightforward. And then I'll say on the interviews, and then sometimes a lot of schools are doing this new thing where it's like, it'll show you a question and you have like 30 seconds to prep and then a 60-second response, right? Typically those are more behavioral. And what I mean by behavioral are, tell me about a time you made a difficult decision, or tell me about a time you failed. Tell me about a time you had a personal conflict, right? Those are the types of questions you're going to get in interviews and sometimes random video essay generators. And again, my approach for this is obviously different from tell me about yourself, but I would think about it this way. If you haven't heard of it, I can explain it to you if we do a one-on-one, but essentially you want to use the STAR method, right? Situation, task, action, and learning. Some people, or I use STAR L. So situation, task, action, result, and then learning, right? So when you're thinking about 60 seconds, like that's not a lot of time. And one of the common mistakes I see is that when you get asked a question like this, tell me about a time when, a lot of people spend way too much time explaining the situation, right? A lot of the people on the phone right now, myself included, might come from engineering backgrounds where stories might be complicated, right? I was on a submarine. Those are pretty complicated machines, right? What you want to do is lay out the basics of the story that is needed for the admissions committee to understand, right? For me, if I was talking about being at periscope depth at a submarine, like that can be pretty technical, but I would just say, hey, we were at periscope depth, which means we were really shallow and when we had to pull out of the water, right? Like that's all the team needs to know. So dumb down the situation and task and spend most of your time on the action. What did you do, right? Be concise about the actions you took to either solve the problem, make the decision, work through a personal conflict, right? Like that is the meat of the story. And then at the end, you want to wrap it in a bow with what was the result of that, right? Did you make the right decision? Was the submarine safe? Was the electrical panel closed and fixed effectively? Or was the design submitted on time, right? And then you can finish with, yeah, what I learned from that experience was, you know, blah, 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 right? That's kind of the core kind of 4 or 5 things you should keep in mind when either going through an interview or through one of those random video essay generators. And it takes time, right? So when you're prepping for those, what I usually tell my clients is when you're doing that brainstorming, right? You should think about 5 or 6 powerful stories from your professional career that cover a broad range of topics, really a leadership story, like a time you led a team, difficult decisions, a failure story, personal conflict story, right? They want to see that you can manage conflict with people and peers. And then maybe a goal story, like maybe a time you set a goal for yourself, right? If you can think of a story for kind of those 5 topics, then when it comes time for the actual interview, no matter what the actual question is, more than likely you can tailor one of those 5 or 6 stories to answer the question that's been asked. So I know that's a lot. I know we're at time. I've been talking at you guys a ton. Apologies for just rambling, but hopefully this was helpful. As you can see here, I have a 10% off code for this week. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions on anything we covered today. Again, you can find me on Leland. Would be happy to book time and work with you all and help you achieve your goals. So again, thanks for joining and hope to see you all soon.